Welcome, viewers or listeners, however you're here today, to Assiduous Dust, episode number 16. I have with us today MYSTI Milwee, the lovely, amazing, groove-tastic MYSTI Milwee. I'm so honored to have her on. We'll, of course, do the OTSCP on the spot collaborative poem at the end, and I can't wait for this interview and being able to hear from some of her own work. So let me check out my cheat sheet for a second. And this just touches a tiny bit of her amazing accomplishments. MYSTI S. Milwee is an international award-winning and published synesthesia artist. And for those of you who are not aware, that means paints to music. Is a poetess, a writer, screenwriter, book cover, art designer, a damn good one, I might say, an illustrator from Southside, Alabama. She is Native American Cherokee Indian background and is a translator of Sequoyah Cherokee. She is the editor and publisher of the Sequoyah Cherokee River Journal. I'm honored to have a few pieces myself in there. It's excellent, highly recommend. Her poetry, writings, and visual art has been published in over 1,500 publications worldwide. I think it's been far more than that, and in over 8 countries. She's been deemed the poet laureate of Fire Eagle's Ministry, Fire Eagle Ministries, and her poetry, writings, and art has been used for academic and ministry studies across the United States and abroad. She's the recipient of the 2020 International Artist of the Year Award, the 2020 Global Arts and Humanities Award, the 2020 Global Arts and Literary Culture Award, and was awarded the 2020 Best Screenplay for The Loner. She serves as an international art ambassador, and she's listed in the directory of Poets and Writers magazine. You'll have to tell me how you got that. And is a member of the International Association of Professional Writers and Editors, MYSTI S. Milwee. MYSTI the Mystic. What? It's an honor to have you here. What haven't you done with poetry? You can't say this show. That doesn't count. Looking forward to doing either upcoming, or maybe there's something that randomly comes up on the spot now, like an idea. Doesn't have to be something that you end up doing. Is there anything that a way of, some people have said, like bungee jumping or riding a motorcycle while writing a poem, or in fact somebody said about like writing a poem while on the toilet and being filmed for it, and might be doing that. So is there anything that
Wow. Well, actually, I really think something that I would like to do would be a poetry sculpture, and where you string the words and just kind of wrap it around and make an art form in the same sense, so that all the words string upward and you can read them along as you look at the sculpture, and it goes in a different form like this, a circle. Just something really different. I've always wanted to do that.
Wow, I'm sure that our listeners and viewers would be interested in that, and I myself would be. That sounds really awesome. You were saying?
It's like poetry in motion.
Absolutely. Poetry in motion. That's what it could be. The gallery for that could be called Poetry in Motion. Yes. Sounds groove-tastic. I dig it. So MYSTI, so you are a synesthesia, and I know that some people might, as I mentioned, that's paints to music. So could you tell me about that? How are you like gifted these magical abilities? Did somebody was it like with Spider-Man, where like a weird bug, like arachnid just went and like bit you, and all of a sudden like, whoa? Was it something that you were gifted upon birth, and how does that not only influence with just your with regard to poetry or art or different things, does it influence other aspects of life? And perhaps I know this is a big complex question, but and in fact, has that shaped your understanding of what constitutes art, what constitutes poetry, and your relationship to the world as not just a poet and an artist, but also as an individual? That's a
Well,
big question. Maybe we'll
it
just take a
is.
chunk
And
and we'll
it's a
deal
very
with it.
good question. And okay, let's see. I started, well, let me say this first. I've had a background in music ever since I was 3, 4, and I've started learning then, but I noticed I would pick up on different timbres of music, and at the time I really didn't see everything coming into play.
Mhm.
But when I was 13, I started developing my gift as a synesthesia artist more so then, because by then I had already been through, I had choir, I was in the church choir, I did solos, I did acting, the drama, the whole 9 yards at church.
So
And that's,
spirituality and religion
yeah,
is also with
and
music is
that's
also
really
part of it, and has been a big part as well in your life.
right. So spiritually, that's what kind of helped my talent develop further, and I was more drawn
Honing it.
to. Yes. So I started painting. My first big painting, synesthesia painting I did, it was called Colors of Diversity, and it was on this great big canvas. It's like 3 foot by 3 foot.
Okay, paint the. Where are you when you did this? Let's paint like a narrative. Like what's going on? Take us back to that moment.
Wow. I was in the office at that time. We were running the security business from the office, and where'd you go with the 3 foot by 3 foot painting, right? So,
Yeah,
and
it's something that's noticeable.
it's like, okay, well, that's not going to fit in this house. So the only place I can paint this is here. So that's where I painted the painting, and I started out. At that time, I had like these big brushes, these big paddle brushes, like really thick, and I used acrylic paint, and then I just put on my Mozart, classical music. That's what I've always painted to when I first started painting.
And so it's broadened.
Say again.
It's broadened, so not just classical. It's been to different things. It's taken.
Yes, now it's into
Okay.
other genres, not just classical, but
Like any rock or
pop
like
rock. Yes,
okay.
pop rock, any of the different music genres I've painted to. Oh my gosh, I would say over 500 paintings, synesthesia paintings, I would say, even if it's just sketches, I've got a pretty big collection on that.
And so do you prefer like, okay, I'm gonna do like, is there like I can paint but turn off the synesthesia thing? Like, can you listen to music and not, what happens? Does it look different? Can you just explain to those who aren't familiar with synesthesia how that kind of interacts as well? And then, because
Right.
it became this thing that you honed, and then is it just it's just used just in this one sphere of my life, or does it kind of influence in many different aspects of your life and expands in the concept of what constitutes art and your relationship to the world?
Right. Well, when I first started painting, it depends on the time, my mood, that helps in my color theory. So if I'm thinking something, visceral or something, outlandish,
Mhm.
I would pick up on those timbres of music. Like if the music is really fast, I'll do like da da da, and then as you can kind of, if you can see this one back here, it's like da da da, and it's in the speed.
Sounds very much like an acid trip.
Like somebody's racing, and you get all these
I've
like
never
little
done.
beats.
I must admit, I've never done acid. So, but I've had some pretty insane out of body experiences meditating in a shrine or something. But it sounds like some stuff of like that, like little bloop bloop bloop. Anyway,
And
you were
and
saying.
and through experiences I've dealt with, my emotional being would be in tune with how the music makes me feel. So I'm painting with emotion. Say the song makes me sad, so I'm going to start doing colors in gray, colors that are light, like a light blue, or some dark colors. And if I feel a dark sense come out, I'll just like make it really bold contrast, and it'll be like really black in the experience. Uh, Emotionally
Right.
is how I project the visual interpretation on the canvas itself.
Okay, so essentially it's like, because I studied mathematics, so, and kind of fell into this whole poetry and art scene, but so what you're saying is in mathematics, you have this thing kind of like a function, and you have things that are sent from one domain to a codomain or kind of a target. And in fact, there
Right.
are different ways to map things on, and you can take elements of, maybe you have oranges and you can talk about apples, but you can actually map apples to oranges, so you can compare apples to
Yes.
oranges. You actually can do that. So in a
And
way, are you saying similarly you can take these things and kind of map it on in a way, depending on, and you'd say that your function is kind of like the mood, also based on place, and your environment as internal and external, which helps you to what you do. So it's not just the music per se, or
right.
not just that ends up being part of that but mapping, as I'm saying, if I understand correctly.
Yes, it's very similar to that. And like I can hear the colors or feel the sounds, and I can also taste the shapes in
You said
music.
taste the shape. So what is,
Yes.
so that's not just
I
the
mean, it's like
sight. So that's
it's
just,
all your senses entwined. You taste, you feel,
so what you're
smell.
saying, it's like, because a lot of individuals would be like, man, this is hogwash, I don't believe in that, or certain things. A lot of things, especially as someone with autism, I find, but also just of navigating the world, that I like to find things of this certain schema of life, that is certain ways, like sight is sight, vision is vision, and certain things. And so what it sounds like you're saying is, in fact, from your perspective and vantage point, while honing this, that you've realized, and let me know if I'm putting words in your mouth, or not,
No, you're good.
or
You're good.
or you see colors in my mouth, or something.
Yes, like I'm looking at like I'm looking at you, and when you laugh, I want to paint something joyful. So like right now,
is there yellow? I
if
feel
I'm
like
gonna
yellow would
paint a
be a bit.
painting right now, like if I was to paint a painting right now of you, or not just you as a human form, but if I were to paint while you're
Oh,
talking,
the emotion,
yes,
that as an expression.
yes,
And so that's it also puts a whole different notion to abstract and concrete expression, the whole thing of that. But what I'm curious is what you're saying. So a lot of people like to say, close rigid of certain things of their boxes. Vision is vision, sight is sight, and certain things. It sounds like what you're saying or articulating is that, in fact, it's, at least for you, that your surround world experience, that in fact it's not so black and white, that senses are
it's like
more mixed, that in fact there's a gradient kind of the things about how we experience. And so what I'm curious is, would you say that there was a time where vision was more vision, or it sort of shifted at different times? Is that not just as you grow on this journey in this world, or is it also depending on the mood, would you say,
Right.
is part of it as well?
Like when I did, for example, I did one for a singer-songwriter in India. This is just as an example. And I worked with him for a while, and I did a painting called Borgeet. And it was
who was what was his name for those
Debussy,
shout out?
Debussy Parashar
Okay.
at a New Delhi, India. And I had worked with him for about a couple of years, I believe. And the first painting I did with him was Borgeet. And at the time, you know, the visions was like really, really strong. And the sounds in the Borgeet music almost sounded like binaural beats. If you've listened to this, kind of similar to that. It's like the frequency, like when the frequency goes higher, the more of an aura that I can project visually onto the canvas. So like when I did painted Borgeet, I just had this really, really strong vision, and I was like, oh my gosh, and it was just so strong. I could feel the emotions coming over me. And I just like, it was like somebody else or something. It was like an outer body experience.
Yeah,
and
it's
I was
like
just like,
you're viewing from,
I was like this.
You're just
wow.
in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, is that then, so you then paint, let's say you paint, and let's say there's the color yellow that you paint or something. Would you then see something that's different other than yellow, sometimes layered on top of the yellow? Or like, how does that work? Maybe I'm misunderstanding things. And then how does that work in terms of color? Because then, you know, it might also be annoying, because sometimes you kind of like in your mind, you might be, I'm constructing, I'm practicing painting something, and, you know, in my head, and, you know, maybe even while you're going about your day or working, as you said, security or other things or whatnot. And so then you later like, man, I can't find the right palette or colors to demonstrate what I actually see. Sometimes it's hard for the spec. Have you ever found that an issue, or?
Well, not really an issue, but.
Or is it like, man, this isn't what it is. I can't find this color. I can't.
I've never had that kind of issue, but like when something is so diverse in the sounds, I'll be like, well, okay, this needs to be layered. So like if I'm, like you were saying, yellow, I would be like, okay, well, I hear this and I hear this. So I would start off with the deeper yellow hues or tones, and then if I feel it like lifting up, like if it's a spiritual lift, I would make it a lighter yellow as it goes up. So it's like
you need to have a ghostwriter for you, Misty, and you could have it called the MYSTI-ism of sound of painting. You know, I'm looking at the mysticism of sound and music, the Sufi, you know, of Khazrat Inayat, of his Sufi kind of, that kind of thing, and you could have that, the MYSTI-ism of, but
cool.
Yeah. So
and I was going to say too, like when I did Borgeet, I really didn't know how it was going to come out, as in like when I finished painting it, I'm looking at it right here too, but you could see the silhouettes of faces in the white, because it's like in the center it's white, and then it's projecting these strands outward and upward, and then it comes down like this. But in the center you can actually see little silhouettes of the heads of what resembles symbolically as the poets, because it's like, almost like a satria dance form. So it looks like everything is like a dancing, and you got this all going on here, and you got this going on here, and then it's got the symbols, how the symbols play, and it just looks like it's lifting upward, like into the heavens, or like a different aura, I would say.
Terrific. That sounds really groovy. I want what you're having. I'm sorry. So,
I felt, I want to say this too, when I have had shows
of art galleries and things, and
art
you also have
galleries,
like people play music as well, while doing that, like, or an orchestra per se, or choir while doing it, or have you done it as, like, what would be the term, a multimedia project or a multimedia performance? Would it be, or?
well, I would say a artistic performance, and or they call it something else too, but I've always called it an artistic performance. And I really haven't done anything per se as in with an orchestra yet, but I'm getting into that, so
Who knows?
But when I have had some shows, which I wasn't painting to music at that time, I just was displaying my art, and I would have people come up and say, "Oh my gosh, this makes me feel joyful," or
so you found that in fact that there was a certain, that it responded highly to, hence given an emotional reaction.
Exactly, an emotional reaction, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, this just comes over me. I feel like I'm like completely into the painting." I feel like, and one of them even stood there and cried.
Because essentially you're painting to emotion in a way, so that makes sense that it's mirroring. If
yes,
yeah.
And there was one that told me, "Oh my gosh, how do you do this?" And I explained it to them, and they were like, "Oh my gosh," and they would just look back at it and feel this, like, they said they were almost like in a different world or dimension, and I painted one that was to organ music from a collaboration I did with Keith Bernard out of London, UK, and he's a British organist and pianist, and I painted his music, and it's like this whole big aura of divine spiritual being, and it just makes you stand there and you can look at it and you can see the angels just look like they're being lifted.
So it sounds like what you're also saying, that in a way it must be, of a lot of things, also hard for, if I kind of had for that, it'd be hard for me to do anything else but paint.
Yes.
Or to do some type of art or poetry or certain words or whatnot. It sounds like it'd find like myself just, how do you have balance in your life also, while doing this? Is that I know that as, artists, as a poet, that balance is something that's really important for self-care, and I'm not the best of it. It's something to work towards. So how have you,
It is.
do you have a sort of thing to kind of stay grounded, or in your day, or certain things that you find? I know that you mentioned that you're of, that church is big. That I know that you mentioned that you've, that you're the dean, the poet laureate of Fire Eagle Ministries. Have your relationship with that stood over time? Has that kind of helped a bit? How your inner relationship with spirituality? I'm gonna shut up now, and you can see.
No, you're fine. I was listening. Well, actually, the work I've done with Fire Eagle Ministries has mostly been poetry.
Okay.
But that really kind of keeps my balance spiritually, and it keeps me grounded spiritually. That way, sometimes, and it is difficult to balance this and that, and doing art and poetry and working security, and it's hard. It is really hard to find that balance sometimes, especially when your emotions are like everywhere. But the poetry that I do with Fire Eagle Ministries has kept me grounded and has a huge spiritual influence within that church. And I've had some who have said, well, this has really helped me get through what I need to get through at this time. And, so, my mission through art, through poetry, is to make others aware of their emotions, their spiritual emotion, their release on how they feel. And through that and the imagery that I project, not only in my art, but in my poetry as well, the people can pick up on that and they can really be drawn into it and how it makes them feel spiritually, and help keep them grounded with balance and keep their emotions in balance. And they would be like, oh, well, that makes me feel better. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that kind of fortifies that what you're doing is in check, as well as that when you're balanced different things, that'll come off and it'll be a way of being of service.
Yes, exactly. It's a very therapeutic way to keep your life, your emotions, and even your career in balance. I mean, everything in general, all of that combined, just has a whole lot of influence on your well-being, your awareness, how it makes you feel. And, that's just what I've always tried to do through my art and poetry, is to help people and be of service through, and have a better influence in society today.
Absolutely.
And that's how, and I wanted to briefly say this, when I first started on as an international art ambassador, that was a really big thing. And I really, at the time, I was like, wow, okay, how do I accept that? And I thought, well, being a influence in society is a more better thing that I can do to help serve this world through therapeutic service, through
absolutely,
helping others, and trying to make the world a better place and help people get through what they're going through, because we're all in this together.
Absolutely.